The iPhone 17 in your pocket costs roughly $1,200. It is a masterpiece of engineering, glass and silicon. Now, imagine walking into a dealership with that same amount of money and driving away in a brand new electric car. Not a down payment, not a monthly lease, the entire car. For decades, we have accepted that vehicles are massive financial burdens. But right now, a manufacturing miracle is happening overseas that is turning the global economy completely upside down. The 2026 Wuling Hongguang Mini EV starts at $4,950. It seats 4 people, goes up to 60 miles per hour, and can travel 75 miles on a single charge. And if you go further down the market into the small factory towns of Shandong province, you will find 4-wheeled electric vehicles selling for as little as $1,500 to $3,000. Bare bones, slow, simple, but real transportation for real people. The iPhone 17 starts at $799. China is building cars for roughly the price of a smartphone. Now you might think, that sounds like a toy, something you would buy for a grandchild. But millions of people across China, Southeast Asia, Latin America and Africa are buying these vehicles and using them every single day to get to work, run errands, and care for their families. And the question worth asking is not whether these vehicles are impressive. The question is how on earth a working car can be made and sold for that little. Because the answer turns out to be one of the most interesting industrial stories of the last 20 years. To understand how we got here, you need to go back to a decision American automakers made quietly over several decades. For most of the 20th century, car companies built something for everyone. Compact cars for young families, simple sedans for people on tight budgets, affordable vehicles for retirees who just needed to get to the doctor and back. The goal was volume, reach every customer, sell to the whole country. But somewhere along the way, the math changed. Automakers realized that large trucks and SUVs packed with premium features made far more money per vehicle than small, affordable cars. A fully loaded pickup truck could generate several times the profit of a basic compact sedan. So one by one, the affordable options quietly disappeared. In 2026, only 4 new vehicles in the United States are available for under $25,000. The Nissan Versa, the Nissan Kicks, the Mitsubishi Mirage, and the Kia Forte. 4 choices in a country of 340 million people. And the American market no longer has a single new vehicle, with an average sticker price below $20,000. The average new car in the United States now costs around $50,000, with monthly payments near $750. The industry walked away from ordinary buyers. It was decided that modest budgets were not worth serving. China looked at those ordinary buyers and made a very different decision. While American automakers were moving up market, China was going in the opposite direction. The Chinese government designated electric vehicles as a national priority. They poured money into factories, research and infrastructure. Between 2009 and 2023, government support for the Chinese electric vehicle industry totaled over $230 billion, according to research from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. That number does not even include what went into raw materials processing and battery manufacturing on top of that. But here is what made China's approach different from simply writing checks. The investment was not aimed at building luxury products or prestige brands. It was aimed at solving a basic problem. How do you give ordinary people in ordinary places a way to get around without spending a fortune? The result was an explosion of tiny, simple electric vehicles designed for the streets of mid-sized Chinese cities, farming towns, and rural areas. 4 wheels, a small motor, a modest battery, and a price tag that a factory worker or a retired grandmother could actually consider. The Wuling Hongguang Mini EV has now sold more than 1.9 million units since it launched, making it one of the most popular electric vehicles ever built. It beat the Tesla Model Y in Chinese sales in some months. It is not glamorous. It is not fast. But it moves people, and people love it. If this video is giving you something to think about, a quick like and subscribe helps us keep making content like this. Now stay with me, because what comes next explains everything. Most people assume Chinese vehicles are cheap because of cheap labour. That made sense 20 years ago. It does not explain what is happening today. The real reason comes down to something called vertical integration. That is a business phrase that simply means doing everything yourself instead of buying from others. Think about what goes into building a car. The battery, the electric motor, the steel frame, the electronics, the software, and the screen on the dashboard. If you are an American automaker, you probably buy most of those things from different companies in different countries. Every one of those suppliers adds their own cost and their own profit margin to what you pay. Now imagine a Chinese manufacturer who makes the battery in-house, processes the raw materials through a partner down the road, sources the electronics from a supplier in the same industrial zone, and assembles everything in a factory staffed by engineers who live nearby. Every step that would have been a separate transaction with a separate markup is now internal. China controls approximately 92% of the global processing capacity for the key minerals that go into electric vehicle batteries. Lithium, graphite, and cobalt are the materials that power every EV battery in the world. China refines most of them. According to the International Energy Agency, for 19 out of 20 strategic minerals, China is the leading refiner, with an average market share of 70%. When a Chinese micro-EV company sits down to build a vehicle, they are not paying foreign markups on raw materials. They are not waiting weeks for parts from overseas. The entire supply chain sits nearby, refined and ready. That is not luck. It is the result of 2 decades of deliberate patient construction. There is one component that matters more than anything else in an electric vehicle. It is not the design. It is not the software. It is the battery. Batteries account for a large portion of the cost of any electric vehicle. If you can make batteries cheaper, the car becomes cheaper. Everything else follows. KTL, a Chinese battery company based in Fujian province, has held the #1 position in global battery market share for 8 consecutive years. By early 2025, its share had risen to 38.3% of all EV batteries installed worldwide. One company, more than a third of all the electric vehicle batteries on Earth. CATL's batteries power Tesla, BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen simultaneously. The biggest car brands in the Western world are depending on a Chinese company to keep their vehicles moving. BYD, China's largest EV manufacturer, takes a different approach. It builds its own batteries entirely in-house, controlling everything from raw material specification to final cell production. That vertical control means BYD pays no outside supplier, no outside profit margin, no outside delay. When you produce more batteries than anyone else on Earth, costs fall with every new batch. The engineers get better, the processes get tighter, the price per kilowatt hour drops, and when the battery price drops, the car price drops with it. The micro-EVs selling for a few $1,000s in China are not cheap because they are poorly made. They are cheap because the companies building them have spent 20 years becoming the most efficient battery producers in human history. You might be wondering at this point, why can't I buy one of these? If a small electric car for a few $1,000s exists and works, why is there nothing like it at any dealership in America? The answer is tariffs. As of late 2025, American consumers face a 250% import tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. That means a $5,000 Chinese micro-EV, by the time it crossed the border and paid all applicable duties, would cost so much that no one could sell it competitively. The tariff makes importation financially impossible for the budget segment. Supporters of the tariff argue it protects American jobs and prevents Chinese government subsidies from distorting the market. Those are serious arguments that reasonable people debate. What is not debated is the outcome for ordinary buyers. Americans now owe $1.667 trillion in auto loan debt. That is nearly 9% of all consumer debt in the country, second only to mortgages. As of late 2025, nearly 28% of all vehicle trade-ins had negative equity, meaning the owner owed more on the car than it was worth. That was the highest figure in 4 years. Meanwhile, at the Beijing Auto Show in April 2026, Reuters reported that for the average price of one new American car, a buyer in China could purchase 5 of the country's best-selling budget electric vehicles. 5 cars. For the price of one. The tariff wall keeps Chinese micro-EVs out of American showrooms, but it cannot change the arithmetic. The vehicles cannot easily enter the United States, but they are going everywhere else. In the first half of 2025, China exported over 3 million vehicles total. New energy vehicles made up more than a third of that figure, with exports surging 75% compared to the same period the year before. Micro-EVs and budget electric cars are finding buyers across Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, and parts of Eastern Europe. In countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Kessia, and Bolivia, these vehicles are not a curiosity. They are replacing motorcycle taxis, replacing old diesel minibuses, and giving people in cities and small towns their first chance at personal transportation without a crippling loan. The Wuling Hongguang Mini EV alone crossed 1.9 million cumulative sales by the end of 2025. Those are not test drives and showroom visits. Those are real families, real retired people, real workers choosing a vehicle that fits their life and their budget. The interesting thing about watching a market like this is that you start to see the shape of something familiar. Decades ago, Japanese automakers were selling small, affordable, reliable cars to buyers that American manufacturers had largely given up on. Detroit laughed, and then those small Japanese cars became the best-selling vehicles in America. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes in ways worth paying attention to. Here is what this story actually comes down to. A car exists. It works. Millions of people use it. It costs less than a smartphone or a month's rent. And the industrial system behind it is not a fluke or a shortcut. It is the result of 20 years of investment, supply chain construction, engineering refinement, and government strategy working together. The question is not whether China can build a car for the price of an iPhone 17. They already have. The question is what that tells us about the choices that were made and the choices that are still being made about who transportation is actually built for. In 2026, more than 76% of American car owners drive a used vehicle. That is not because they prefer used cars. It is because a new car at $50,000 with a $750 monthly payment is simply out of reach for most people. Somewhere between the $1,500 Shandong electric runabout and the $51,000 American average new car, there is a very large gap. And in markets, gaps eventually get filled, whether that happens through American innovation, through tariff policy changing, through some startup nobody has heard of yet, or through a Chinese manufacturer finding a way around the current trade barriers. That is a genuinely open question. But the gap is real, the demand is real, and the technology to fill it already exists. It is just not allowed in yet. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think America will ever have a truly affordable new electric vehicle, or has that ship sailed? And if you found this valuable, please subscribe. We cover the stories in finance and economics that the headlines move past too quickly. The next one is already waiting for you.